They told me I wasn't welcome at my sister's graduation, so I took back the one thing they depended on. My father didn't lower his voice. He didn't hesitate. He looked straight into the camera during our family Zoom call and said, calmly and clearly, "We don't want to see your face at his graduation." No pause. No explanation. In the small square beside him, my brother leaned back with a smile that wasn't kind. My mother stared down at the table, pretending to adjust something that didn't need fixing. And in that moment, something inside me finally broke. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I didn't try to explain myself. I reached for the one thing they never thought I would take back. My name is Eliza Monroe, and for most of my life, I believed that keeping the peace meant staying quiet. I grew up in a family where love came with conditions. Where the person who gave the most was expected to ask for the least. Where sacrifice wasn't praised, it was expected. My father, Calvin, was the center of everything. Loud opinions. Clear rules. His word always final. My mother, Diane, followed his lead. Not weak, just careful. She smoothed conflicts instead of stopping them. And my younger brother, Noah, grew up protected by that system, praised for existing, rewarded for effort I never saw. I learned early where I fit. I moved to Portland in my mid-20s for a job in financial systems. I told myself I wanted independence, but distance didn't change anything. It only made it easier for them to reach me when they needed something. The pattern started the week I signed my first real contract. Calvin called. His voice was proud but already tired. "Noah's tuition bill just came in," he said. "Can you help this once?" I said yes without thinking. That once turned into every semester. Every fee. Books. Housing gaps. Emergency costs. I paid quietly. I didn't ask for thanks. Noah never thanked me anyway. Calvin stopped pretending it was temporary. Diane stopped checking in at all. Whenever I hesitated, my father's tone changed. Not angry, disappointed. "You're the stable one," he'd say. "This family depends on you." I believed him. One winter, I saved for months and bought Noah a laptop so he could finish his final year strong. When he opened it, he tilted his head and said, "Oh. I thought it would be the newer model." Calvin laughed. "Next time," he said. Something in my chest tightened, but I swallowed it like I always did. The truth showed itself months later by accident. Calvin left his phone on the counter during a visit. A message popped up from my uncle. "She pays because she doesn't push back." Calvin's reply came seconds later. "Some people are built to support the family." I didn't confront him. I carried that sentence with me like a bruise under skin. Invisible, but always there. Still, I paid. Because I thought usefulness meant belonging. The Zoom call came during a week that already felt wrong. Calvin had been sending short messages, asking if the next tuition payment was processed. No greeting. No please. Then my bank flagged unusual activity. Designer shoes. Jewelry. A weekend shopping trip. Almost $4,000. The card was in my name. I hadn't touched it in years. When I called Calvin, he laughed. "You're overthinking it." Noah needed a few things for graduation. That night, I checked everything. 2 more cards. Maxed. Subscriptions I didn't use. Payments I didn't approve. All tied to their address. Noah's email. My name. This wasn't an accident. It was a system. The final blow came from a message sent to me by mistake. A group chat screenshot. My name at the top. Under it, Noah wrote. "Relax. Eliza exists for this. She's basically our safety net." I stared at the words until they stopped feeling real. The next evening, the Zoom call opened. Calvin didn't waste time. "We don't want you at his graduation." Diane stayed quiet. Noah smiled. Once, that would have destroyed me. This time, everything clicked. I looked at the screen and said calmly. "Then you'll never see my money again." The silence was immediate. And permanent. When the Zoom call ended, the screen went black, but the words stayed in the room with me. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt honest. I sat at my desk and didn't move for a long minute. My hands weren't shaking. My chest wasn't tight. I felt clear, like a decision had already been made long before my mouth caught up. I opened my laptop again, not to reread messages, not to wait for an apology that would never come, but to act. The tuition portal was still open in my browser from earlier that day. Noah's name sat there in bold letters. One more payment scheduled. One more semester attached to my bank account like it belonged there. It didn't. I hovered for a second, not because I was afraid, but because I was aware. Aware that this was the line. Once I crossed it, there would be no going back to the version of me that paid to be tolerated. I cancelled the payment. No drama. No warning. Just a quiet confirmation message on the screen. Next, I logged into my bank. 3 credit cards under my name. All active. All used recently. All tied to devices and emails that weren't mine. I froze the first card. Then the second. Then the third. Each confirmation felt unreal, like cutting strings I didn't know were wrapped around my ribs. I reset every password. Removed every connected device. Noah's phone. Calvin's tablet. Even an old laptop still linked to my account. The calm didn't fade. It grew. I created a folder and started organizing everything. Not out of anger. Out of truth. Every charge. Every statement. Every date. Every location. It wasn't support. It was expectation. While I worked, my phone buzzed. Noah, did the payment go through? Calvin, don't be immature. Fix this. Diane, please breathe. You're making this worse. Worse. As if the worst thing I'd done was finally stop. I didn't answer. Instead, I logged out of every shared service. Music. Streaming. Grocery delivery. Cloud storage. The list was longer than I expected. Years of small conveniences stacked together, quietly paid by me. By the time I stood up, the sky outside my apartment had darkened. Streetlights flickered on. The city moved like nothing had changed. But everything had. 3 days passed before Calvin demanded another family meeting. The email subject line said urgent, but I recognized the tone. It wasn't fear. It was loss of control. I joined the Zoom call out of curiosity, not obligation. They were already there. Calvin sat centered in the frame, posture rigid. Noah leaned back, arms crossed, irritation written across his face. Diane stood near the edge of the room, half in the shot, half out. We need to talk about your behavior, Calvin said immediately. I said nothing. Noah's graduation is in 2 weeks, he continued. The school won't let him walk unless the balance is paid. You know this. Noah rolled his eyes. Why are you making this such a big deal? You always handle this. That sentence landed differently now. I'm not paying, I said calmly. Calvin blinked, like the words didn't register. Don't be ridiculous. You're upset. Fine. But don't sabotage your brother. I'm not sabotaging anyone, I replied. I'm stepping out of a role I never agreed to. Diane finally spoke. You're escalating this for no reason. I shared my screen. Rows of transactions filled the call. Dates. Amounts. Vendors. Addresses. What is this? Calvin demanded. The truth, I said. Unauthorized charges. Cards used without consent. Accounts opened in my name. Noah's jaw tightened. I played the audio file next. Calvin's voice filled the room. Calm. Confident. She'll pay. She always does. Noah laughed in the recording. It's basically her job. When the sound stopped, no one spoke. Diane's face drained of color. Calvin cleared his throat. You could have talked to us. I did, I said softly. For years. Noah snapped, you're blowing this out of proportion. You used my identity, I said. I'm choosing not to take this further. That's the only reason this is still a conversation. That word hit hard. Conversation. Calvin leaned forward. You're destroying this family. I shook my head. You built a system that worked because I stayed quiet. Diane whispered, we didn't know it went this far. Yes, you did, I said. You just didn't stop it. Silence stretched across the call. Then Calvin tried one last time. If you walk away now, he said, don't expect to come back. I felt the old fear rise. The trained panic. Then it faded. I'm not walking away from family, I said. I'm walking away from people who never treated me like one. I clicked leave meeting. The screen went dark. For the first time in my life, nothing rushed in to replace it. The silence after I left that call didn't break the way I expected. There were no immediate texts. No furious voicemails. No dramatic follow-ups demanding explanations. At first, that quiet felt unnatural, like the pause after a loud crash when your ears are still ringing. I kept waiting for the impact to catch up with me. Instead, the days unfolded slowly, almost gently. On the fourth morning, an email arrived from the university. It was brief, polite, procedural. Due to unresolved balances and an attempted account authorization issue, Noah would not be permitted to participate in the graduation ceremony. Appeals would be reviewed after the semester concluded. I read it twice. Not because I felt triumph, but because it felt final in a way words rarely do. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just sat at my kitchen table, sunlight cutting across the floor, and let the weight I'd been carrying for nearly a decade slide off my shoulders. For the first time, the consequences weren't mine to manage. 2 days later, there was a knock on my apartment door. Not a call. Not a message. A knock. When I opened it, Calvin stood in the hallway looking older than I remembered. Not frail, just smaller. Like someone who'd spent years standing on a platform that had finally given way. I didn't know where else to go, he said. I stepped aside without inviting him in or turning him away. He took that as permission and walked inside, stopping near the window like he wasn't sure what to do with his hands. Noah's not handling it well, he said. Diane is pretending she's fine. But she isn't. I waited. We didn't realize how much you were carrying, he added. We thought you were okay with it. That sentence almost made me laugh. I wasn't okay, I said quietly. I was conditioned. He nodded slowly, as if the word settled somewhere uncomfortable. Are you coming back? He asked. I met his eyes. Not unless everything changes. He didn't argue. He didn't threaten. For the first time, he simply accepted the answer. I'm sorry, he said, not defensively, not dramatically. Just tired. I know, I replied. And I meant it. He left a few minutes later, closing the door gently behind him. The silence he left didn't feel empty. It felt earned. In the weeks that followed, the fallout moved outward, not inward. Extended family started reaching out. Not with apologies, but with questions carefully disguised as concern. Had I gone too far? Did I really mean to let things get this bad? Wasn't family supposed to endure? I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I answered only once, with a sentence I'd practiced until it felt solid. I stopped paying for access to people who didn't respect me. After that, the messages slowed. At work, something strange happened. I started breathing differently. No checking my phone every 5 minutes. No bracing myself for emergencies that weren't mine. No budgeting around someone else's irresponsibility. My performance didn't suffer. It sharpened. I slept through the night. I stopped clenching my jaw without realizing it. My shoulders relaxed in a way I didn't know they could. One afternoon, my manager asked if I'd consider leading a new internal project. She said she'd noticed how steady I was under pressure. I almost said no out of habit. Then I stopped myself. Yes, I said. That word felt different now. Not an obligation. A choice. A month later, a message arrived from Noah. Not angry. Not demanding. Confused. I don't understand why you hate me this much. I stared at it longer than I meant to. I don't hate you, I wrote back. But I'm done being used. There was no reply. And strangely, that was enough. Another week passed. Then another. Diane sent a message late one night. I don't recognize you anymore. I typed slowly. That's because you never really saw me. I didn't block her. I didn't mute her. I simply stopped responding. And the world didn't end. The most unexpected part wasn't the loss. It was the space it created. Space to think. Space to feel. Space to exist without performance. I realized something then that took years to reach me. I hadn't lost a family. I'd lost a role. And without it, I finally had room to become a person. The quiet didn't fade. It settled. At first, I kept expecting something to break it, another demand, another accusation, another attempt to pull me back into the shape they preferred. But days passed, then weeks, and nothing came. No emergencies. No guilt-laced apologies. No sudden, "we miss you" messages disguised as concern. That's when I understood something important. The silence wasn't punishment. It was adjustment. They were learning how to exist without the person who fixed things. And I was learning how to live without waiting for approval. One evening, as rain tapped softly against my apartment windows, I opened an old folder on my laptop. Photos, documents, emails, pieces of a life I'd once organized around everyone else's needs. I didn't delete them out of anger. I didn't rush. I reviewed them the way you look at an old house you no longer live in. Not with resentment. With distance. That version of me had done the best she could with the information she had. And then she grew. A few days later, an unexpected email landed in my inbox. Not from family. From the university. They were conducting an internal review related to the attempted account access. They thanked me for cooperating and informed me that no further action was required on my part. I closed the message and leaned back in my chair. It wasn't about winning. It was about being done carrying consequences that weren't mine. Weeks later, I ran into Calvin again, by accident this time. A coffee shop near my office, early morning, half asleep city energy. He looked surprised to see me. Then relieved. We talked for 10 minutes. About nothing important. Weather. Work. The city. Before he left, he paused. You seem lighter, he said. I am, I answered. He nodded, as if that answered more than he'd asked. He didn't mention Noah. He didn't mention Diane. He didn't ask for anything. That mattered. The strangest part of healing wasn't the big moments. It was the ordinary ones. Buying groceries without checking 3 budgets. Making plans without building escape routes. Saying no without rehearsing explanations. I learned that peace feels unfamiliar when you've lived in survival mode for too long. At work, I thrived. Not dramatically, steadily. I was promoted within the year. My manager told me I had quiet authority. I smiled at that. I had spent years being quiet without authority. Now I had both. One afternoon, a notification popped up on my phone. A message from an unknown number. This is Noah. I don't expect a response. I just want you to know. I'm starting over. I didn't understand what I was doing before. I do now. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt acceptance. I hope you build something that's yours, I replied. Then I put my phone down. No follow-up. No reopening doors. Just truth, offered without obligation. That night, I stood on my balcony, the city lights stretched out below me like constellations rearranged. I thought about that Zoom call, the moment they told me I wasn't welcome. They thought exclusion would weaken me. Instead, it clarified everything. They didn't erase me. They released me. And I finally understand this now. Family is not defined by who takes from you. Love is not proven by endurance. And peace should never be something you have to earn through silence. I didn't walk away loudly. I didn't burn bridges. I simply stopped paying for my own erasure. And in the quiet that followed, I found myself, whole, steady, and finally seen. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.